You know what I'm not excited about?
What?
Being back in the carpool line. You know what I am excited about? Being back in carpool classroom. Pew, pew, pew. So Shannon, what are we going to be talking about today?
I've got a good topic for us today.
All right.
Engagement. What is engagement?
Well, you see, when two people love each other very much.
No.
What?
I'm talking about student engagement.
Oh,
Student engagement in the classroom.
Student engagement. Well, that's a different definition. That's a loaded question because people have very different definitions of engagement.
What do people think it is?
When kids are busy, that's a lot of people think that if my kids are doing work, they're engaged.
Recently, I had a group of teachers just write down what they thought student engagement was. The answers were just a big, wide variety. And we got things like it was fun, it included movement, there was music, students were in it, students were doing what they were being asked to do. I had some flashbacks to what I used to think student engagement was. Before we've learned some things, we've seen some things. We've seen some things.
We've seen some things, but we've also done some things.
Exactly.
And if anything, we have learned by not doing things correctly, and we figured it out that way. Go ahead, tell them the story.
A long time ago, I was reading some student essays on a Sunday night on my recliner, which I should not have been doing. I was reading through these essays.
There was wine involved.
There was a little wine involved, but because the more I read, the more furious I got. Just the grammar mistakes alone, just the basic stuff. And it's stuff that we had already gone through. At that time, teacher evaluations, the buzzword was student engagement. So I was like, oh, they about to get engaged. So the next day they came in and I was dressed in a lab coat and I had a surgical tray that had a big syringe on it from like the local Tractor Supply. And when the kids came in, their eyes were big and they were like, and I said, your essays are diseased and we're about to take them to the clinic. We're going to get them fixed up. So we did sentence surgeries. We injected commas. We put Band-Aids on comma splices.
You really took that metaphor and just went with it, huh?
I went with it so hard and the kids loved it. They were so engaged. They were into it.
I would have acted like I was engaged too if you had a syringe in my face.
He did not have a needle. But the kids were all into it. And every day we did a different type of activity with it. And then on Friday we took the quiz for the grammar rules. And
How was that?
They bombed it.
Why?
Well, that's what I asked myself. Why? I busted myself on this lesson and they still weren't getting it. And then I went back and reflected as teachers do. I realized I gave them the rules and I would do some models and let them practice, but the rules never stuck. I didn't do it in a way where it made it sticky in their brains. I just gave it to them and I didn't let them own it.
So what does that have to do with engagement?
Engagement is not just what makes them fun and keeps them in the learning. What do you think engagement is?
Well, there's different ways that you can engage kids, but there's also different levels of engagement. And so if you ask me what my definition of engagement is, it depends on the level you're talking about. When it comes to the most essential part of the lesson, we want engagement for learning. And that goes back to that student ownership piece that you were talking about. If kids are doing the work and engaging in the work that is most important, they are being held accountable to their learning. And that's the difference. We can make them do things all day, but at the end of the day, if they aren't individually thinking about something independently, not group work, not partner work, they have to be held accountable to it first. And then you can turn and talk, then you can talk to your group. But that engagement for learning is really what we want to achieve in the most essential content. Now, there are other forms of engagement, like what?
I know that compliance and participation kind of gets a bad rap. It's got a lot of negative connotation around it. But honestly, before we can get to the engagement for learning, we do want our students to be in the lesson. We want them to be participating. We want them to enjoy it. I was excited that my kids were happy about those lessons and showing some excitement. But sometimes in a lesson, we do need compliance or participation. We just got to get them involved, and that's okay. At critical moments of the lesson, there are certain places where the kids have to do the thinking and learning on their own in order for it to stick, in order for it to become a part of their memory. And that was the piece that I was missing. I was glad that I did that fun, engaging lesson, but I wish I'd had those moves in there that let them process and own and discover the rules. Why are they important? How can I use them? Not just here's a model, go practice. Here's a model, go practice. I needed a little more authentic learning. hearing?
Basically, the deeper the engagement, the higher the accountability. And so if you are planning a lesson, there's nothing else you want kids to get that day, identify what you want them to learn and make sure that you have high accountability, and that will limit the opt-outs and it will raise the engagement because it will raise the student ownership.
You just said something really powerful.
What's that?
If you think about limiting opt-outs on a spectrum, there are places in a lesson where you just need to get kids involved in doing what you need them to do, just activating their brains,
or
and
even
things
just
like that.
sitting down and paying attention. Like,
Yeah,
if I'm
that's
going to
a
give
big deal.
directions, they have to engage in the directions and understand what's going on.
Wait. So what you're saying is classroom management also has a part in student engagement, right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you can't teach them anything if you can't get them off of the wall. Step one, my lowest form of engagement is just classroom management, getting them in their seats, getting them to pay attention. I don't care if you hear me, give me your surprised eyes.
I can't do surprised eyes because I have too much Botox. But
But that is one level. If you're like, okay, everybody look on page 15, paragraph 1, everybody put your finger there, and everyone does it, you can actually quickly check to see if everybody's on the same page, and that is a form of classroom management. It's just getting everybody on the same page.
But it is also that's engaging them. It's really great to think about it on that spectrum of, do you just need to manage them and get them actively doing what you need them to do? Do you need to get them participating? And I think that's where we see strategies like pulling the popsicle stick so that they're paying attention and you're calling on a few. But which moments of the lesson do you really need to get every single kid thinking, learning, processing, writing, speaking?
When you pull popsicle sticks, it feels randomized. It feels like you're giving everyone a chance, but in reality, you're only asking one or two kids to answer the question. That means about 25 other kids are opting out and do not have to think about the question. So if it is a really important question, you might want to have them jot it down on a sticky note, then turn and talk about it. That way everyone is held accountable to that critical learning.
If you're a brand new teacher or just within your first couple of years, let's talk about student engagement and lesson planning, because just getting lesson plans alone when you never have enough planning time, that's really hard. How can I make planning student engagement more manageable?
Well, it doesn't have to be this whole thing. You don't have to be a Pinterest teacher to get kids engaged. Here's an example. Clearly defined roles for accountability. ELA is the easiest one to do this with because ELA always comes with two questions. It's usually an inferring question, part A, right? And then it's followed by what evidence supports your answer. So in the classroom, instead of just asking a random question, I could say, hey, partner A, you are going to answer the question. Partner B, you're going to give the evidence that supports the answer. So now everyone has something to think about. Everyone is engaged in the text and everyone has something to talk about and is held accountable. So that is just one way that you can plan engagement without it costing you anything, because ain't nobody got money for that.
Well, I think another way to make planning for engagement a little bit easier and streamlined, thinking through your lessons, is if you're brand new to this, just start really simple. Have those classroom management moves down. What are your partnering routines? What are your routines for classroom discussion? What are your routines for managing activities? Just get really good at that. When you're feeling really confident with that, try some of those participation strategies where you get everybody talking. It blows my mind sometimes how much one little move, like a turn and talk about something that you just read, really increases that student engagement immediately. Or everybody stop and jot, then turn and talk about what you jotted on your sticky note. Something that simple. When you get really good at both of those components, then think through where in this content does every single kid have to know or walk away with something important. That's when you can include those student engagement moves for learning, where all kids have to really think through.
And there's one other perk to student engagement, y'all. When you have the kids doing something, it frees you up. We always leave more tired than the kids.
Yeah.
When you give students something to do, that frees you up to walk around and listen to conversations and see what they're jotting down, to see, hey, are they picking up what I'm putting down? Are they smelling what I'm stepping in? If we stand at the front of the classroom or even the back of the classroom, they never do anything. We don't know if they're catching on or if they're following along. I know that happens a lot of times when you're reading a text, like let's say social studies, when there's multiple pages of text or multiple paragraphs. If it's calls for a read aloud and the kids have nothing to do, guess what they're gonna do? Nothing. Something as small as saying, okay, as I read this, I want you to underline the evidence that supports this claim. So now you're doing a read aloud, but you're walking around and they're having to underline evidence, and you can see, oh, that kid really understands what's going on. That kid might be riding the struggle bus. I might need to intervene there. So that's something small that goes a long way and also frees you up to help to see if kids are picking up what you're putting down.
So if you've got some great ideas for student engagement moves at any level, whether it's classroom management, participation, or engagement for learning, drop those in the comments below so that your fellow teachers can grab some of those ideas and try them out in the very next lesson.